We're live now.
Wow. Good afternoon, everyone. This is such an exciting afternoon forum. My name is Lynn Jones, and I'm humbled and honored to have the role of moderator and host of today's event. I should add to that timekeeper for today's event. So I'd like to welcome you to the Black, Indigenous, People of Color, or what we've known as BIPOC Roundtable discussion. This discussion is hosted by the Blue Nose Ability Arts and Film Festival. That's the Blue Nose Ability Arts and Film Festival. They're really committed to offering a festival that is accessible to everyone. As a disability organization and arts festival, BAAFF, or that's how the acronym that we use, is committed to expanding the accessibility of arts in our community year-round and offering really high quality accessible events. The programs and services are provided in a manner that it respects the dignity and independence of all people. They continue to pursue partnerships and diverse community groups from the LGBTQ, Black and Indigenous communities to develop programming and events that better serve people from all parts of our community. And I think it's really important to note here is the organization sees this work is a work in progress. So we're all here to learn and to grow. BAAFF stands with protesters across Canada, in the United States, and across the globe, demanding an end to police brutality and racism, and acknowledges the deep and powerful challenges faced by the Black community in Nova Scotia and around the world. Black Lives Matter. We also recognize the intersectionality that artists with disabilities who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and what they face on a daily basis, and are honored to host today's event. Today, wow, I know you can't wait. Today, we're going to hear from our local BIPOC artists living with disabilities. And we're going to have an open conversation with the experience of being an artist in 2020 and through a global pandemic. So we're going to look at both of those areas, disability and pandemic at the same time. And it's going to be a really honest conversation. At this time, we'd like to give special thanks to our partner, Shelley Fashion. He's from Emerging Lens Cultural Film Festival and has helped to curate the group of individuals joining us today. Now, anyone that knows the name Shelley Fashion knows how connected she is and how eager she is to help wherever she can. So this is a big shout out to Shelley Fashion. See the heads nodding. In terms of our land acknowledgements, we couldn't begin without acknowledging Africa, her land and her people as the mother of all creation and human life. Even though Africa has suffered untold and unacknowledged miseries, she continues to ascend. Africa and her people demand reparations for such atrocities as the transatlantic slave trade, slavery, colonialism, imperialism, and continued global anti-Black racism. The event tonight is taking place on unceded, unsurrendered Mi'kmaq territory, governed by the Peace and Friendship Treaties of 1752. That's a long time. The colonization of indigenous lands, ongoing displacement, death of resources has always been accompanied by narratives that frame indigenous people as primitive, as entitled and lazy, and is criminal. We acknowledge the role these narratives have played and continue to play in harming Indigenous people. And this afternoon, we call upon everyone, as discussed in the Truth and Reconciliation recommendations, to be guided by Indigenous people and communities in telling their story. So we thank the Mi'kmaq people for allowing us to be on this land and to hold this wonderful event at this time. So, without further ado, and I know you've been waiting for it, I would like to introduce our panelists for this afternoon. Following the introduction of the panelists, they will be sharing some questions and areas that I'm sure you have questions about. And then they will go into, now one of the panelists has said, Lynn, it's called popcorn style. So we're going into we're not going to eat the popcorn, but we are going to be answering questions as we feel moved to share with our audience. After which we will end with some closing remarks, and also with those closing remarks, the many thank yous that need to be offered for us being able to do that. So, panelists, are you ready? Now, come on now.
Ready. We're ready. I'm ready.
We're all ready. So let me begin. We're so happy you're with us today and agreeing to do this, to introduce the panelists. And you can just do a little wave to the audience when I say your names. Megan Savani, who pronouns are she, her, is a multidisciplinary musician, sound recording tech, music producer, and disability justice advocate, raised in North End, Halifax. After over a decade of living and working in Montreal, she left us. She suffered a life-changing, disabling injury that left her unable to walk and forced her return to Nova Scotia. We're glad she's here, where she has made significant progress in rehabilitation. Give your big wave, Megan, your royal wave. Thank you so much. Marjay is a hip-hop artist hailing from the community called East Preston, and we all know about the Prestons and the fact that it's the largest Black community in all of Canada. He is currently working on his debut album, which is set to be released early 2021. So I know he's going to tell us about that album. Do your royal wave. Do your wave. Well, there's the wave. Thank you. Raven Davis is a multidisciplinary artist, curator, human rights speaker, and educator, who is from the Anishinaabe Nation, Treaty 4 in Manitoba, Canada. And I know I failed a bit on that pronunciation, so I'll try it again. Mississauga. There, I think that's a little better. Davis was born and raised there and in the Toronto Territory, which is Toronto, Ontario. She currently works as a professional artist and educator between Toronto and Kitchipuktik, Halifax. I love these names, and we're going to learn them. Davis is deeply committed to preserving and practicing Anishinaabe and Midewan practices, and has been called upon as a knowledge keeper, mediator, and practitioner in natural medicine, honorable harvesting, birth and death preparations, and ceremony. And I really need to pause to say that we can't thank Raven enough for sharing part of her culture, if even in the naming that she used. We love it, and we're going to learn it, and we thank you for embracing your culture in that manner. Do your royal wave. Wow, there it is. Thank you so much. Des Adams is a transgender, Indigenous, Black Scotian who uses the pronouns he, him, and he's a performing artist in multiple mediums. Best known for his spoken word poetry and community advocacy. In recent years, he struggled to find proper care for his physical decline and chronic pain, but has made huge strides in lifestyle change in an effort to keep creating, growing, and promoting positive change. And I didn't tell Des, but I actually remember when Des was just a mere child, and remember well some of the wonderful things he used to say as a kid. But anyway, do your royal wave, and thank you so much, Des. Where's your wave? There it is. Thank you so much. Now, Kayla Borden is a multi-hyphenate entrepreneur, event coordinator, promoter, DJ, and community advocate. Born and raised in Nova Scotia, this 33-year-old is an African Nova Scotian, Jamaican descendant that honors her heritage and ancestry through all of her work. Uses the pronouns she, her, and she's going to tell us about that big word, multi-hyphenate, later. I know she is. So where's your wave? Where's your wave? I love it. So thank you all of you for being with us today. We're excited. I'll do my wave. Can't wait to hear of you. So let's move right into the forum and what everybody in their seats is waiting to hear about. So my first part of the roundtable, I'm going to ask people if they'll tell the audience about their art, because we got a bit of it in the bio, but we want to hear about the things that you do. So, what order will I pick? I think Megan will start us off. So go ahead, Megan.
Hi, excuse me. Okay, so mindful of the time, I am a musician / recording tech, live sound, audio engineering, just a general audio nerd. And my practice has changed so much since my injury, so I haven't quite found my groove yet, but predominantly I write songs. I'm a songwriter. And I really love experimenting with sound, textures, just creating, like looking for new ways to create sound and to make songs, as opposed to, staying stagnant in my previous ways, as sort of maybe just with the piano and guitar. And I have a lot of different music, projects. The one I focus on the most right now is to sort of kind of go deeper into like my ancestral history. My mom is an Indo-East African, came to Nova Scotia in the 70s. And as like a member of diaspora, East Africa, but as an Indian, it's hard to explain to people that don't know that background. But yeah, I listen to a lot of Hindustani classical music, Bollywood, 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, like very much my era. And so I guess I just make music. And I also do workshops, sound, live audio 101 kind of thing, and disability justice workshops, which is a topic that I'm very passionate about and still learning about as I live it. And teach it.
Thank you for sharing that. Megan, I was thinking as you were talking, wow, there's an intersectionality there, if there ever was one. And I see the smiles from some people there. like all of these different areas, songwriting and creating sounds and playing sounds all together. Like, that's a lot. So you said I just make music, but I think you're underestimating. So you might want to change how you give that. You don't just make music. You're fabulous work there. So I thank you. So moving on, we go into Majay. Can you share with us? Where is there you are. Tell us about your.
Yeah, a songwriter. I've been a songwriter for almost 2 decades now. Ever since I was a kid. Yeah. So basically, when I was a kid, I was like, rappers are the coolest people on earth. So I made up my mind that that's what I was going to do. I started writing every day, constantly. Yeah, that's what I do. I write songs, but I've always been good with like writing, period. So like English class, like reading, writing, essays, anything, storytelling. So along with hip hop, I do also spoken word. I started writing a book. So like anything that has to do with words, like that's my thing. I'm a sucker for puns. I just love words, like, and like the placement of them and like sentences and like songwriting. Like I'm obsessed with that stuff. So yeah, I say hip hop artist, but I mean, I'd like to dabble in like anything as far as like writing goes. So yeah, writing is my jazz.
Margie, you look too young to be doing all of these different things, and you're talking about starting way back in the '60s, probably. Wow, that is so fantastic. I was thinking when I was young, our biggest thing with words was supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, but you've got everything all wrapped up. So yeah, that's absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing. Next is Raven. You're on, Raven.
Hey, thank you, Lynn, and thank you so much for that really heartfelt land acknowledgement that you did earlier. Appreciate that. So yeah, this is like the worst part. I'm not a big fan of talking about myself. It's hard to do. But I'll begin by talking about when I first started making art, and that was with my mother. And she used to work with clay, and she was a drawer. She was a drafts person. She'd make the most incredible Halloween outfits. She was a taker of the land, a harvester. So I spent a lot of time with her out growing things and harvesting things. And so, yeah, just really developed a passion for art at a very young age and continued to do some stuff. I was born and raised in Toronto. I moved to Toronto, to Cape Breton Island, to Sydney for, I think, about 14 years and have been down here in Halifax for almost 8. And, there's a big period of my time where I didn't do any art because I was raising these 3 incredible humans that I have, my 3 boys. And so a lot of that time was focused and prioritized on them. And I realized, how much I missed making art and painting and having the time to like sit down at the kitchen table and maybe create something undisturbed for an hour or 2. And so, yeah, I just, started picking it up again as I got older. And I did a lot of like kids programming with art. I was, when I first started in therapy, it is actually directly related to my disability. It was when I was about 7 or 8 years old, and they did art therapy with me. And I remember how much I just loved doing that. And then as I got older, relating art as a form of healing and a tool as restoration to continue our practice, even with the trials and tribulations we've been dealt with in our life. So, you know, my disability is a part of my art, and my art's a part of my disability, and it's all interconnected. And because I've had this from a very young age, it's like entwined in everything I do. So yeah, just really grateful to be here with all of you. I'm so pleased and so honored to be with you all. And I just look forward till tonight. Miigwech.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that, Raven. I neglected to say the pronouns they, them. And even in our introductions, you can see all of the different ways that people come to their art. So Raven really shared. You got me when you said your mom. I mean, that's it. Okay, she likes her mom, and she respects her mom, and her mom is part of where she's going with her art. That's all. You don't have to say anything else. So I think it talks about, it speaks to how our family connects to our art, our mom and our 3 boys and all of that. I love that. So we've brought another perspective just into the introductions. Thank you again, Raven. So next up is Des, who uses the pronouns he, him. Can you share, please, Des, about your art?
Yeah, so I guess to start off, I need to say that a lot of my artistic journey really started in performing arts in general. I had been in multiple film and theater productions over the past 20 years or so, on and off, and was just raised in theater and media and multimedias. So I was always around that. But eventually things kind of changed for me when I got older, and I realized how much of a love I had for writing and storytelling, as well as spoken word poetry, through some mentorship. And since then, I've stuck with it. I've been doing spoken word poetry and workshops professionally for 12 years now. And yeah, it's been really rewarding. I've loved the audience, and just being able to reach people who are also going through things that they struggle with. And that's one of the reasons why I enjoyed it as well, is that brutal honesty is absolutely allowed and welcome in spoken word. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I do all kinds of other stuff, but I don't want to take up the time. That's pretty much where my niche is at the moment.
Wow. Thank you so much, Des. On this panel, I've had the privilege actually of knowing you, which I mentioned to the panelists, for a very long time, since you were really young. And I think you've been on the stage since you've been born, because I remember when you were really young, reciting poetry on stages with hundreds of people in the audience. So we're really looking forward to further sharing that you have around your poetry and your spoken word as a part of that. And also, because I know it mentioned your community advocacy, because somehow we think that art belongs in some corner, and that what we do in our community is somewhere else, and in actual fact, it can only do. So I thank you. And last but not least, by any way stretch, we have Kayla. So Kayla uses the pronouns she, her, and you're on. Kayla can't wait. I can see that. Tell us about her art. Come on, Kayla, do it.
Yeah, my art. I guess my art is more like organizing and showcasing people's talent here in Atlantic Canada. Thing is, ever since I was 4 years old, I realized how much love I have for music. I love every aspect of it. I feel like growing up, I was always exposed to music from my family. And I think it was like junior high school was when I started writing. I used to write songs, or I guess raps and stuff like that. And then I realized that there is like a lot of talent here in Nova Scotia. And I kind of like took more side of the business side of things to get more exposure for artists here in Atlantic Canada. And I love showing and sharing music with people when I DJ. So I love sharing my culture through that.
Wow. Thank you, Kayla. I as you were speaking, I was thinking, because you're actually the first one that mentions really about really pulling in the cultural aspect of your art, and how it's there's not a separation between your culture and your art. So I know we're all in that situation. So I thank you very much. Listen, this audience is still stuck on your bio that says you are a multi-hyphenate. And I think they deserve to know exactly what that is. So can you tell the audience what that is?
Yeah, most definitely. Multi-hyphenate means someone that does multiple things. So like I've dabbled in a lot of different, I guess, roles in the industry. I did everything from promoting, event managing, and I did a lot. I guess putting on concerts. I have thrown workshops. Like I said, I DJ. I've worked with a lot of different festivals and organizations. So I've dabbled in a lot of different things in the film, art, and world, and trying to combine them all, because I feel like with music sometimes we forget the other aspects of it. So I love to combine everything together.
Wow. I think when we have heard from the others too about explaining their art, we got a lot of that where people are doing all different things and bringing it all together. So guess what, you guys, you all get to put that on your resume. So take note, multi-hyphenate when you're doing up your bios and your resumes. Thank you again, Kayla. So our next question for our panelists relates to their disability. Now, some have brought that into the picture a bit, but we want to expand a little bit more, because we all know now your artistic endeavors, and we'd like to know what is the correlation between that art that you're doing and the disability that you're also living with. So I think what we could do is we're gonna go around the table, because it is a round table, but we'll give Kayla a little break and go to Des first and then back to Kayla. So Des, can you start us off with talking about the correlation between the art and your disability?
Yeah, so as a multi-hyphenate,
I love it.
I used to actually be a dog trainer and groomer for a little longer than I was actually doing spoken word, probably since I was about 16. I'm 31 now. And as a result of that, I ended up with carpal tunnel syndrome in both my hands. So my hands have not allowed me to do a lot of the work that I used to do. And other disorders have been building over time. So I'm really now leaning on my creative work. At this point, I've established my name well enough that people will call me to things such as this panel, or doing workshops or consultations, etc. So I'm really leaning on that. Also, something that's really changed recently for me is that I left the city. Had a hard time accessing care, even though where I live now there aren't doctors. But at this point it was re-traumatizing, going into a number of spaces. And my condition is also worsened by stress. So I've moved away. I'm now in Dignity County and living on a farm with my partner and 2 wonderful little boys. Farm stay-at-home dad has taken over. But yeah, it's really, I'm kind of leaning on what can I make, and that's shifted a lot based on my my location, as well as what I have, what I'm physically able to complete in a day. I'm a whole other kind of busy here, but the stress is completely different, and I'm doing a lot better, so that's good.
Wow, that's the best part. You're doing a lot better. Des, I just have a little bit of confusion around, because I know you talked about your carpal tunnel, so you weren't able to use your hands to do that kind of art, and you moved into the area of poetry. So what art is it that is affected by these chronic issues?
Okay, so this is the thing. I was doing spoken word and doing all of the grooming and stuff at the same time.
Right.
But I'm not able to really do other jobs with the physical problems I have. It's not just carpal tunnel, it's my whole spine, it's my connective tissues.
Okay.
So I really need to have my own schedule. And with writing and doing commission work, I can do little bits of that at a time and make my own schedule and then have it presented, right? I'm not being asked to go to rehearsals at a certain time for a certain amount of time, you know. Yeah, so it's very different.
Thank you so much.
That answers your question.
Yes, it does. And I hope for the audience too, because now it's much clearer how that can seriously affect how you're able to produce your art. So thank you for that clarification. Kayla, we're back at you in terms of the correlation between your art and your disability.
Yeah, I'm the type of person that like that I need to be doing a lot of different things. So I feel like especially with this pandemic that we're in now, it's kind of a bit different. It doesn't really allow me to be out there doing different things, and now I have to connect with people like just online. But I feel like I have a nonprofit organization called Healing Your Psyche. It allows me to like kind of take a step back, where I can give myself and other people voices to talk about like their mental health and how they can use their creativity to help them with that.
Okay. So when we talk about the disability, it's related to the mental health aspects.
Yes.
And trying to still find space for doing your art when you're dealing with these kinds of issues. I like the idea too that you're sharing those kinds of challenges with others. So you have a platform that you've created to help others.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fabulous. So thank you so much for that, Kyla.
Kayla.
Raven. Okay, I made the mistake first time.
Okay.
I didn't look at my sheets. I'm so sorry.
It's just like K and then La.
I got it. Okay,
all right.
I'll look at the sheet. Okay, Raven, please, can you help us in terms of, and you talked about it just a little bit, but I think that what you have to share is so critical in terms of people understanding they still can do art with these kinds of disabilities. So yeah, share your correlation between art and disability.
Thank you. Well, first of all, obviously there's no limitations. There are some for some folks, but art is not a limitation for me. I think everyone has access to art. Doesn't matter, who you are, how you identify. Even the people that, when I do workshops around art and they're like, well, I can only draw stick figures. But, then it turns out to be this incredible black and white inked drawing, that is just has so much depth. And they don't really relate to it as art. And I think for some time, it was really hard for me to identify as being an artist. I felt it very pretentious when I first started to say I'm an artist as like a profession. And I think even though art has been around me and my family in my life, I think because it was so embodied in different areas of my childhood, such as spending time on the land, such as praying, such as dancing, that it didn't seem separate, like, this was a separate job. It was just something that we always did. So I thought that was quite beautiful. And I think, now and continuing to use art as a form of healing, but having a practice that's embodied with the earth. So when I'm out fishing, I'm creating. When I'm out on the land harvesting berries, whatever, quills, I'm creating art. And I think that there's no separation between being in the studio and being on the land. For me, it's just embodied in what I hope everything I do, which is also my relationships with others as a community builder and facilitator, how I love working with our communities here. I've worked with Kayla, which has been pretty special. And, I've had a lot of really beautiful opportunities to cross collaborate. And that just fills me with so much joy, so much satisfaction to work with community. So, and my relationship to my kids, my relationship to my partner and wife, my relationship to my family. It's all part of my art practice. And for me to feel good about creating work, those areas, really, I need to feel a good balance in. Because when stuff happens, such as the pandemic or, people getting sick or violence or trauma, it really kind of puts up those periods of time where I have troubles creating. So, accessibility is important to me for people to understand that, I don't have even really good website. I can barely keep up with Instagram. Like, my kids want me to go on Snapchat, and I'm like, stop it with these things. And I'm trying to figure out, you know, all these platforms to kind of promote myself. And I'm already, you know, kind of, yeah, I still question, you know, what are artists, what are curators, what is this identification, you know, and so, yeah, relating it back to cultural knowledge, relating it back to the land has given me the confidence to talk about my art in this way. So,
Wow.
thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Raven. I can really relate to when people almost want you to take a sword and cut yourself up and think that this part of you goes over in one corner and this part in the other when they can't be separated. So I like how you've really grounded yourself in that thought that no, this is the whole me, all of these things together. Like how when I talked to Des earlier, I think that it would be really important to give me and the audience a really a good sense about how the disability part is that. What exactly? How do you describe your disability in terms of doing this artwork? Because I got a good sense about the relationship with one, but what is that? How do you frame your disability?
Well, I don't really frame it, you know, because it's not something that I was raised to be okay with. It was something that was used against me in the courts. So in terms of framing it, it's not a question of attaching the value of identity to disability, but it's just part of who I am. And so I just really, you know, commend everyone again for being on this Zoom and being just dropping into like absolute vulnerability. And, you know, if it was with other folks, I may not feel as comfortable, but, you know, knowing all of you and speaking to all of you, I know that we're all holding each other in these conversations, and the complexities of being public around disability, which carries so much stigma. And, you know, people, question the exact same thing. And for me, framing disability, it's kind of like asking a trans person to identify what's in their pants. I don't do it. It's part of their identity. They can relate to it in different ways at different times. And I just think it's important to acknowledge that. So thank you.
You know, that is so really important. And it tells us how important this forum is, because it's a learning and a growing experience. So it puts us in a really safe environment to be able to put it on the table. Like you've said, this is not how I describe myself. And we have to be really conscious about what is important, even to the individual, in terms of how we describe, how we picture, or what questions we ask. So I can't thank you enough for your honesty and in allowing us this learning and development experience. So thank you.
Thank you.
Our next person is Raven, right? If I got it right. I mean, we did Raven. So the next one is Maje. Maje, can you talk about your relationship to disability, the correlation between the art and the disability? Where there you have your mic, your mic's on. There we go. We got it.
Magic.
Thank you.
All right. So I would say my art came before really my my knowledge or recognition of my disability. My struggle, which really was highlighted in the past 3 years of my life, is anxiety. Like it actually crippled my ability to do what I love, which was write. And so there's times where like my anxiety will be so bad that I won't be creating for a long time. And then there's like the other side of that where, like I'm in a groove like mentally and now I'm creating. So it's like sometimes I wonder if I could have ever got to that point without like the other side where I wasn't creating. I tend to overthink everything, and I have like a very like strong like desire for perfection. So like I feel like the combination of both of those, especially in the past 3 years, have really like held me down, but also like got me to the point where I am now. And like you said, I have a debut album coming like in the next few months. So I feel like I needed like both sides of that. So yeah, honestly, my anxiety like kicked my ass for the past like 3 years. So, and I mean, I feel stronger. Like I feel like I've made it to like a place where I have a hold on it. Like, I have like, a grasp of it. And, yeah. And then it comes out in my lyrics as well. So I feel like I'm doing my best to conquer. Also, I curse, but I really didn't mean to. Sorry if I offended anybody, but yeah.
So, Maji, thank you so much. That was wonderful, and your apology, but I'm learning to deal with language, and that uses different language, and you can call me old school, but I'm getting into new school, so I'm sure lots of the audience feels the same way. When someone shared earlier about health issues and mental health issues, and then we pull in your concerns around anxiety. It does take strength and to put yourself out there and say, I have this kind of concern and I'm dealing with this. And I think Raven touched on it too, like in her thanks to the rest of you as panelists for coming together and doing this kind of sharing. So I thank you so much for putting that on the table. I'll move to our last speaker on this round, which is Megan. And if there's Megan, you have to look around the screen to find the people on the screen. So Megan, can you share with us too the correlation between your art and your disability?
Hi, yeah. Before I get into that, I just wanted to piggyback on something that Raven talked about. Sort of like recontextualizing what disability is and how it applies to our value, and sort of like you have to like consider that the definitions of disability are heavily weigh on colonialism, heteropatriarchy, capitalism, and your ability to produce and actually like, commodify yourself. So if, without getting too deep into whatever history that I'm not super.
I think this is critical. So thank you. Keep us learning.
Like in pre-colonial contact eras, their disability was not even really much of a word. Like it wasn't looked at in the same way. There was value, intrinsic value in humans, and everyone, it wasn't based on what you had to offer in terms of like, just because you can't like go physically out, for example, and collect food for your family. There's other ways that you can care. Just your existence matters. And why, as much as I do like to, or I'm working towards openly talking about my experience with disability, I think it's important to acknowledge that we don't owe anyone explanations of how we experience the world, sort of like as this lens. I do choose to identify as disabled only because I feel forced to, in terms of how I'm perceived and my value is perceived in society. So insert lots of swear words right here, you know, F all those things. So yeah, in terms of my connection with disability and art, I lost the ability to take care of myself. I couldn't walk. I couldn't go to the bathroom on my own. I couldn't dress myself. I lost sensation in my limbs. I was told I might never walk again. I have had to completely grieve the artist that I once was. And there was times where I couldn't even speak. I had neuromuscular conditions affecting my ability to actually talk, which is funny. If you know me well, that's really hard for me. So, so when it's funny, when you ask me, what is my relationship to art and disability? Like my art, my creativity is freaking existing with a disability and having to grieve who I was before, because people placed value on me based on what I was doing before. I ran a music venue for 7 years. I DJ'd, I had job opportunities. I did live sound. I would let people play my venue come from Halifax. I wouldn't charge them for the venue. I did this, and that for friggin' years. And I never asked for much in return. And then I come home to Nova Scotia completely against my own will. My mom's a nurse, bless her soul. She came to Montreal, took care of me till I was well enough to come back home. And that's sort of when I realized like a lot of the creativity comes from, like I couldn't do my music. I couldn't play drums. I couldn't hold even a coffee mug in my hand for like a year. I had to use styrofoam cups. I couldn't lift anything. Couldn't move my head left or right, up or down. I was completely stuck in one spot. So you might hear a lot of anger in my voice right now, because that's the grief that still exists, even though I have made significant progress and I feel good about the future. I have to work full-time on rehabilitation. So I don't actually have time to do my art as much as I'd like to. So I have dissolved that boundary, and my art is my existence. I know that sounds like I'm not trying to be all hoity-toity. I didn't go to art school. I didn't even finish high school. But like, and then being completely denied access to art spaces. And you know what? Art spaces that I helped create. That blew my mind. I couldn't do stairs. I couldn't go anywhere. And the first time I did anything in Nova Scotia was actually Kayla, working with you and the START Festival. And I can remember how scared I was to share my access needs. And, I'm just going to totally side note and not talk about my art. I'm going to talk about like the desperate need for accessibility to be considered not just as a single issue and not as like a rights-based issue like within the law. And, because disability rights only cover, it's very white-centered. It's extremely based on, are you a documented citizen? Are you incarcerated? What rights do you actually have? Which is why disability justice is something that I have been focusing more on, and understanding ableism in its current context by dismantling definitions of disability. I could probably ramble on and on, so I want to stop and give time to stop because I won't stop.
Megan, your sharing was phenomenal.
Jazz hands.
Absolutely phenomenal, because for you to, because we did a little bit in the opening, but actually to have a working knowledge about colonialism, patriotism, all of these intersections that we don't often talk about in terms of disabilities. We can talk about it, about, for example, being denied racism, which we're going to get into, and those kinds of things. But whoever talks about it in terms of how it affects us in the disability world. So that is a conversation, like you have said, deserves its own roundtable.
I can't talk about myself and art without
so you did it for
how it has impacted me, and fighting to retain that label. And is it because I can't produce anymore? I unable to financially profit from my art and my technological skills, etc.
And so you've actually provided the segue into our final two areas. So we won't do the round table going around. This is where who called it popcorn? Which one of you named it as popcorn? Where we do our popcorn.
Popcorn style.
So the segue into the popcorn style has been provided. So I kind of changed up a little bit based on your conversations, and I think that's good because we're all learning and growing. So how we might move into the final two, we put the final two questions, kind of put them together, and feel free to just jump in what you want to share about that, because we are in pandemic times, and I'm sure that in these times that it's made our artwork look a little bit different, or share it a little bit differently. But also in those pandemic times is what resources do we need to operate? So we're talking about pandemic, we're talking about resources, how we resource our art. And this, the word that I think I've only heard once in the panel, but we can't have, come on now, we can't have people who are Indigenous, who are Black, people of color do a panel and not address that elephant in the room, which is racism. Has that played any role, or if so, how has it? Because I actually thought you would put that you would have that at the top of your conversations. So since it hasn't been, it's really small. Let's pull it out. So we're pulling out the pandemic, how you're doing your art, what kind of resources might be required or working in, and you can go in and out, and also how racism may have affected also. It's that intersectionality thing that we were talking about. So who's that? Des.
I'm happy to jump in. I'm happy to jump right in.
I thought you had, so go ahead.
Looks like you're ready.
It's funny that you bring that up because back in November, I was actually working on applying for a grant for a piece with a working title called Black Scotian, which was just a body of work talking about my experience and my family's experience of being a Black Scotian, what that means. And I was actually really excited about it until COVID hit, but it was actually before the pandemic was really in lockdown mode. Both of my kids were sick with COVID, and I was left pretty much round the clock nursing them, as well as taking care of everything here. So they have not been in childcare or in school since then. Yeah, we've decided to homeschool regardless. I was kind of on that bandwagon anyway, but yeah, it's a lot of things have been happening since then. We've had our railway blockades. We've had, protests across the globe. We've had, one of the most significant civil rights movements in history. And meanwhile, I'm stuck here. Really, all I can do is rant about it and create more art, and try and have my reach from home. And it's been infuriating, but at the same time, my safety is also important. It's tricky. I'm also not very far away from Metegan currently, and there's been a lot of safety concerns around that as well, regarding arsonists in the area. So it's been a wild ride. I wish I could be more involved in a number of ways, but it really is shaping how I'm doing things. I will say I like the fact that more people are doing things electronically, and it's just kind of accepted that, you might not know it, but there are 4 baby chicks, like chickens, in my office with me right now, and they've been really good. But it's kind of normalizing home life, and that everybody is living a little differently. I wish we had that pre-pandemic, but here now, I'd be interested to see where that goes. But yeah, that's pretty much my spiel on that.
Thank you, Des.
Yeah.
Anyone else? I told you this would happen.
I was gonna say, Majay looks like he's ready to talk anyways. He looked like he was ready to jump in.
Whatever. The pandemic really worked. Like, being an artist in the pandemic was kind of tough. I think I seen both sides of it. So the beginning, it was super tough and confusing, and then like halfway through it, I just I kind of got into a groove. I say halfway through, we're still in it, but like the second half of this year, I kind of got into a groove and was just like, well, this is the norm right now, and just try to find a way to adapt, because it's affecting my livelihood as an artist, and just as a person, I'm very confused and uncomfortable, and I feel like even more shackled because I had lots of like things lined up. I was supposed to travel, so it was kind of like just accepting like this kind of like, and also just changing your perspective on it. Like, everything stopped. Like, like that is literally essentially what my mind wants, like for things to pause so I could kind of collect my thoughts. So I kind of just, changed my perspective on it. So yeah, the beginning was super hard. And then the second half, like, of this year, just kind of got into a groove, figuring out who I was, like, as an artist, and like in a pandemic, in a world where like, nothing's moving, and like, things are being canceled and whatnot. So yeah, that's that. You said something about racism. Oh yeah, racism. I will say this, as an artist like Majay in Nova Scotia, I get super tokenized a lot, based off the fact that I would say the kind of music I made, like I won a songwriting competition a few years ago, and I wrote a song about Viola Desmond and her social, like, movement and whatnot. And ever since then, it just seems like every year white people want to check off that box by me performing that song. So I kind of took the paychecks. I was like, I'll take the money. But I'm very well aware of, what's happening. And, I kind of just use that to like, to grow as an artist and to like get opportunities that, a lot of my peers aren't able to receive. But yeah, being a hip hop artist in Nova Scotia is completely messed up. It's really weird because it seems like there's a comfortability like with like white rappers here that I just don't see existing anywhere else. And I'm just like, you kind of like, this is my livelihood. Like I told you earlier, I was doing this for like 2 decades. It's kind of like, this is my livelihood. And you woke up one day and you were like, I can do this too. So, and it's just the comfortability that throws me off. I'm just like, do you actually know what, like, what you're doing and how oppressive this may look? Because you're a white rapper in Nova Scotia, you're probably going to get more opportunities than I get. So that really threw me off, especially in the past few years. Really weird. Like Nova Scotia is just really weird for like the quiet racism, and just like the way that things happen, and they play the but I'm not racist, and like this is like it's I mean, for having like the biggest all Black community in the country, it's really weird. So dealing with that, I think has affected my art, both negatively and positively. And yeah, I don't know if there was any other questions that I didn't answer, but I just really wanted to express that, like, in Nova Scotia, or in like predominantly white, communities and provinces, Black people get tokenized all the time. The good Black people get tokenized all the time. The Black people that, like, they don't see as Black, or they, they're the polite Black people. Yeah. So yeah. And I got a hell of a smile, so I think that that works too.
Wow. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Maje, because it does point out to the fact that as an artist, you're not exempt from having to deal with racism the same as everyone else. And the opportunity, there are challenges, there are barriers, there are things that it goes back to the colonialism and the effect on what happens today, that's still reverberating from that time as to how we're perceived and what resources we achieve or have. So thank you for sharing that. Anyone else want to jump in on that one?
It's Kayla's turn now.
I know you were going to say that. I know you were going to say that. Yeah, I guess to kind of piggyback off like what Magic is saying about being tokenized as an artist, you're also tokenized as a industry professional. So I feel like once you get into those spaces and they see what you're doing, I guess they kind of try to learn what you're doing, but then they also don't allow you to do those things that you want to do for your communities. They kind of stifle you. And that's what I've been actually kind of struggling for the last 2 years from the last organization that I was working with, trying to come back from that. So during this pandemic, I've been just trying to think of ways of like how I can come back from that and how I can move forward. I feel like it's more so of like creating things for yourself and for your communities rather than, I don't want to say not working with the organizations, but like really like getting yourself up there rather than saying that this organization helped me. So with the pandemic, I've been feeling like it's been like kind of like back and forth, like kind of a roller coaster. Like 1 minute you feel like you're all in it, you're ready to go, and then the next day you're like, man, I don't know if I'm doing this right, and then the next day you're back up again. So like I feel like COVID has been like kind of like stifled in that way because you can't do the same things that you used to do, I guess, post-pandemic.
Mm-hmm. And you hit on a good point there, which was the fact about being an industry professional, is sometimes that maybe perhaps our work is not perceived in that manner, and it's an uphill battle, not only externally to have that recognized, but also how we feel internally.
Absolutely.
About doing that.
Absolutely. And you also see these in like bigger organizations like outside of our province. Like you see what's happening with the Grammys recently and with Factor, you know. Artists that are already established keep on getting money, but like underrepresented and like underground artists, they don't get the money. So like what, you have to be rich to get money? That doesn't make any sense. You already have that money.
You're so right. You're so those are the resources. Somebody's like, yeah, those are the resources that we're talking about. I don't want to leave this question without our last two panelists having, and don't feel pressure, because Raven, you know, I'm not putting you on the spot, or that, but if you want to share in this area, we certainly have to have time and space for it. So go ahead.
Okay, I'll take that as I'm up.
I would never say that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I was just waiting for that to happen. You know what? Yeah, there's been a lot of precarity through this COVID. You know, the intersections of what a lot of us face regarding even disability, race, queer identity, trans identity. You know, I'm not really an easy to swallow, you know, Indigenous person. People know that, you know, I've been pretty outspoken about a lot of things. And with that responsibility, I feel, it comes a lot of precarity. It means that the opportunities aren't as easily obtainable because they're like, you know, really, Raven, like you're gonna have to go through like a lot, you know, like I'm always worried that people have a different already stigma against me being outspoken about Indigenous rights issues, about disability rights, about trans identity. And so, you know, the same things that happened before are just amplified, like everyone. They're just amplified now. So we dealt with racism before, it's just amplified now, you know, and yeah, so, you know, opportunities, that's been hard. It's been interesting kind of sinking in back into like, I'm home all the time, which is a very familiar place for me as like a primary caregiver for many years to my kids. So I've found like my body's remembering this motherhood, this nurturing component. So for the first like whole bunch of months, I was just like in the kitchen, I was cooking, I was cleaning, like every day for like hours. And I didn't get a lot of work done, but I also felt like that was my role at that time, just to care for my family so that they're healthy during this pandemic. So, you know, trying to find my way, not only through like society and opportunity, but just again, back to centering myself and figuring out what I need going forward in the next, you know, 13 lunar cycles. And yeah, all the same things, like I said, have just been amplified. You know, there's still like pretty heavy police surveillance on my street very often, you know. What they're doing here, who knows, you know, but if I put on my phone and I see HRM, you know, police on my phone, I know that they're accessing Wi-Fi within the city block, you know, like those things that just make you kind of uncomfortable. And, you know, when the pandemic first hit, like even my kids, you know, just like approached on the street by police asking, you know, are you brothers? You know, do you live in the same household? That kind of stuff. And, you know, this is the same thing that we dealt with before. You know, Black and Indigenous people at the root of this oppression and, you know, all the other things, disability, how you're presenting, you know, it's what's happened down in Sulnerville, like what's happened in Wet'suwet'en territory, like at the beginning of this with the the blockades, and then all of a sudden the Canada puts down their foot, the rule of law, and just sends like this huge wave of crushingness, like thinking about our futures, thinking about our rights. What's happened here in Nova Scotia with Mi'kmaq Nation and the commercial fishermen, and the racism, the hate, the violence, and how it's been accepted.
Yeah.
How it's been tolerated. How we've had an election, mayor election, now there's 3 premiers, up at the post. Like, who's talking about Mi'kmaq rights here? Who's talking about, the Treaty Truck House in Windsor, water in Buladeck,
We are on of him.
like all the things, So it's kind of hard. Like, sometimes I wish I could just paint a picture, maybe on my coffee cup. Something super basic, something that would give me pleasure and joy. And what has happened is I feel just a sense of urgency to get this system out of my body through my art. Is like it's my only access.
Like a relief.
There isn't support for mental health for POC in this province.
Sure. We're here.
Well, yes, as a community, but I mean, like, people in our healthcare systems, when we're fighting for pain management, just to, like Des said, trying to be, hi, I'm in a lot of pain. Like, oh, well, really, how much pain? Like, I've been to doctors where they're like, oh, you have back pain? Oh, well, maybe you need a better bra. Like,
no, it's not.
I just said I was trans, so like, our systems are all collapsing, and the people that were suffering before are just going to suffer greater until we get on track. And for me, the strength has come with collaborations with folks.
Yeah, you talked about that earlier, Raven, and how important that was to you. I'm just conscious to move to our final.
Thank you.
Our final speaker. I thank you so much, but I like that you talked about that collaboration when you talked earlier, and how important that was to you, even as an individual. But now you've broadened it to community, that if we all collaborated, we could change this whole picture. And Megan, they sometimes say we save the best for the last, but we're all the best. But you need to bring it on home. So yeah, she's ready. So if you would share with us, we'll take that time after you to wrap it up, because I can't wait to get my 2 cents worth in at the very end. So, Megan, go ahead.
I guess I'm trying to, like, everyone had so many amazing points, and I want to bring it back to everything. In terms of racism, my experience with that is really, like, based on I have a lot of proximity to whiteness. My father's white. I can choose if I want to use my immigrant sounding name or my dad's name. So I don't want to take up space talking about that. Something I can share another time. So I guess just like acknowledging my privilege and how my experience as a non-Black person of color, mixed race person, has a very different experience, and Islamophobia plays into it, which is under the umbrella of racism. And it's funny, who was it? Majay, I think, talked about the comfort of hip hop artists, white, specifically hip hop artists in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Now, I'm about to give away how old I am, but I used to go to the Khyber Club on Barrington Street in the late 90s, and hip hop rap night. It was bumping and everyone was having fun, and it was completely run by white people. Hip hop community, like, and I've actually always wondered about that. And I haven't, I've been out of this city for so many years. I come back as a person much older, with a lot more knowledge and understanding of, the space that people who are white or white with white proximity, how much space they take up. Yeah, really, I just have to like acknowledge that it's such a thing here. And yeah, like I've always wondered about that. And it's a gatekeeping, it's a way of gatekeeping, and also like access to gear and certain types of like, you know, just like studio spaces. And oh my God, like mommy and daddy paying for my studio, which is fine. But like, what are you doing with, like, how are you sharing your skills? Are you gatekeeping and you're keeping that like, I'm the cool beat maker, I'm the cool rapper, like, and that goes in, you know, kind of all different, like, I have been in punk scenes and indie scenes for so many years and experimental music scenes, and the white people gatekeep that shit too, part of my language. But it's just literally every aspect of arts and community. So it's so exciting to be back in Halifax, and sort of like introducing myself to like, just like getting to know people under a different lens, because I'm not out there in the music scene anymore. I'm not playing shows. I'm not doing sound for shows. I'm not working in the venues. I just set up my recording studio for the first time, which is really exciting, and have just finally started playing music again. And just, I don't want to take up too much time, but talking about access, the band in Toronto, Lal, gave me my first opportunity to perform. Pandemic has given me a chance to slow down. I can't go to the music venue. I can't carry my DX7 weighs 43 pounds. I can't be carrying that gear into the venue. I can't get on stage. I don't know how my body's going to react. They allowed me to pre-record the set, and I got to play music with my friend Kelvin, and just was given this opportunity to play. And so I chose to do some classic Bollywood reimaginations of some classic Bollywood music, which is like Indian people love Bollywood movies and music. And yeah, so, you know, I might get hate for this, but, and I'm not in any way saying the pandemic is good, but like if I was to like express I'm feeling selfish in this moment, everybody finally had to slow down to meet my isolated pace. I have been isolated for a few years before the pandemic hit. Nothing changed for me except I was actually given a platform for the first friggin' time, which is
wow.
So that's that.
Wow.
I talk a lot.
Listen, can everybody give everybody a round of applause?
Yeah,
because
awesome.
I mean, this has been phenomenal. We promised, if you remember when we started, we said that we were going to hear from local Black, Indigenous, people of color, living with disabilities, and have an open conversation about the experience of being an artist in 2020 and through a global pandemic. We said that we would do that when they started. Desiree, wake up over there. I see everything from this perspective. And we did it. And you as presenters may think that this is just another panel. What does it mean? But you need to know that people don't every day they don't get to hear these kinds of perspectives, especially from the groups that we're talking about. And what was going through my mind is as you were doing that, we've got so many writers just within this little group of people here. I think everybody talked about the writing that we do. Imagine if we had some type of artistic endeavor that allowed us, and it doesn't even, you guys are the artists, a book. And if it's not a book, because that's so whatever, like maybe it's pictures, maybe it's artistic expression, whatever, because this kind of conversation and learning and challenges, because we have been challenged, I thank you all for that, but it needs a wider audience and more people need to learn. and we need to be able to access more of those resources that you're talking about. I really hate to end this forum because I feel like it's hard to believe we went through over an hour and a half, but it's just so many more conversations that needed to be drawn from what you all have shared. I can't thank you enough on behalf too of the organization, which is the Blue Nose Ability Arts and Film Festival. I was told when we started that they see this is the highlight. Imagine, you guys, you're in the limelight, the highlight of the whole festival. They recognize it wasn't something ordinary. They want to do better. They know they're not there, and this is just the beginning. So on that note, I'll sign off. I thank you, and I honor you, and I'm humbled to be a part of the team today. So goodbye. Thank you.